Hi, everyone. It's Ryan Fowler with the Inner Game Group. Just me today, but we have a really good show for you. Jordan is supposed to be here. I think he slept in. It's like 8:30 a.m. where he's at. So I'm going to give him some crap for that. Tim is setting up some stuff for his day job, so he can't be here today. Hopefully, Jordan drops in. But this is going to be a good one today. This interview with Dr. Anna Lembke, who is a Harvard psychiatrist being interviewed by Mike Bartlett, Diary of a CEO. We're actually covering three parts of this interview. It's like an hour and a half, 2 hour interview. But Mike Bartlett, Diary of a CEO, huge channel, about 8 million subscribers. He says this is his most important interview of the year. And that's why we are covering different parts of the interview, because it's just so rich and so dense with content. So we did part one last week, talking about addiction, the pain, pleasure, balance. And today is also very important because it's something no one discusses, and just having the right mindset regarding pain, suffering, pleasure, all of that, the good, the bad, learning to accept it, learning to see the benefit of suffering and of pleasure, both, and that's how we're supposed to be. And accepting that can bring a certain amount of peace. And so this is very content dense, this particular interview. There's science here, but we also feel that as hypnotists to go in and as practitioners, day in, day out, reprogramming people's subconscious minds and the things that we've learned, there's quite a bit we can add to this conversation to complement what Dr. Lembke, Stanford, maybe I said Harvard, she's a Stanford psychiatrist professor and a psychiatrist. So we can add our own unique twist on top of what she says. If you watch the entire interview, you know that we're really big on toxic shame. She actually mentions toxic shame, but in this interview, but she doesn't go into it as nearly as much detail, although she does mention it and stress it's important. So Denise, by the way, welcome to the show. And we are happy to answer any comments anyone posts, any questions. We value you guys. So let's go ahead and dive in, and I'm going to make sure that this is queued up. I believe it's queued up on the right. Yep. So we are ready to rock and roll. What is the point of pain? Is there benefit to pain? Why does our body give us pain? Pain is generated by our body. So it's there for a reason. Same thing with suffering. All of our emotions, even the ones we think are bad, well, our body, our nervous system, our brain generates them for a reason and purpose. So let's dive into that. So I'm going to cue this up. And we are going to get going on this. Here we go.
In the world we live in today, we probably have to intentionally do things that are painful, do things that are hard. Pleasure, pain, balance.
Yeah.
Like we learned that when we press on the pleasure side of the balance, like with alcohol or pornography or romance novels or cannabis or whatever it is, right? No sooner does that happen than our brain adapts by those neuroadaptation gremlins hopping on the pain side of the balance to bring it level again, but they like it on the balance. So they don't get off right when it's level. They stay on until we're tilted. An equal and opposite amount to the side of pain. That's the come down, the hangover, etc. But it turns out the opposite is also true. If we intentionally press on the pain side of the balance, for example, with exercise or an ice cold water bath or intermittent fasting, those gremlins will hop on the pleasure side of the balance, and we will get our dopamine indirectly by paying for it up front. And there are studies in humans showing that when humans expose themselves to exercise, for example, dopamine levels gradually rise over the latter half of the exercise. And then when the exercise stops, dopamine levels will remain elevated for hours afterwards before going back down to the baseline level position without ever going into that dopamine deficit state. So it's a
Okay, so this is very important, guys. Dr. Anna Lembke, she is pointing out a very important truth. Let me see if I can get this. Yeah, let's try it that way. Because Nope. I thought Jordan was on. He's not. Okay. So this is very interesting. So the thing that I do, that Tim Costello does, that Jordan Kurtz does, all subconscious reprogram. We work on people's core identity more than anything else, how they feel about themselves, their ability, their value, whether or not they belong or fit in or they're accepted, at least by some other people in this world. And when people come to us, they think maybe if you get your internal world just right and you're living this amazing life that you're going to be happy all the time. But that's not what happens. Our brain is actually designed so that if you get a lot of pleasure, your brain actually then releases chemicals or stops producing dopamine, and then you go back. And the ideal is to go to homeostasis, but our brain is actually designed to overshoot. If you're feeling too much pleasure, will actually intentionally take us into pain territory. And from the last video, the reason for that is once you're in pain territory, you're now motivated to get back into the pleasure. And that turned out to be optimal for survival. Pain is a motivation. If I did not have tremendous pain and suffering in the early parts of my life where, mom with narcissistic personality disorder, I had manic depression, I had CPTSD, I had anxiety all the time, trap, anger, rage. All that suffering led me to search for a solution. I went to the normal therapy, traditional, conventional psychotherapy, CBT, on and off for 15 years. It helped somewhat, but it only helped so much, and it was very slow, very inefficient. And so kept searching for other solutions, and that's how I found hypnosis. In less than 2 months, changed my life forever. Fix all sorts of stuff that traditional therapy could not fix. Fix it more deeply, more rapidly. That's why I'm doing what I do today. For a lot of people, pain motivates them to new heights. However, we get rid of toxic shame, and the reason we get rid of that is that doesn't do us any good. There is a small percentage of people where toxic shame motivates them to be extremely successful, but they never become happy. That toxic shame always keeps them miserable to a degree, and they tend to live very unbalanced lives, and they're very successful, but they're not enjoying everything that life has to offer. They just work, trying to be good enough. So what we fix is people come to us, and on the pain pleasure balance, their internal subconscious trauma persistently puts them in the pain scale. And so then they are vulnerable to addictions to try and do anything they can to get it into the pleasure scale. But so what we do really is fix all your inner subconscious wounds to kind of get in that middle, or even like slightly into pleasure, feeling good about yourself, loving yourself, all of that. And then you end up freeing a lot of energy up to go ahead and be productive and go to newer heights. And I would say, yeah, on the balance, you're a little bit on the pleasure side. Your life overall is feeling pretty good. But I never tell people, in fact, I say the opposite. I tell people, listen, for me personally, I fixed my subconscious, and I was doing massively better because I always was in that pain. And it seemed like I was just getting to break even when things went well for me. And that was temporary. And the default was pain. And my brain would try and do things to get me into the pleasure side of the scale. It didn't work very good because I had a lot of trauma. But I never tell people, okay, let's fix your subconscious. And people tell me, they're like, oh, I feel amazing. This is so awesome. And I'm doing so much better, and I'm so much more successful. Everything doesn't mean it's going to be like that 24/7. Doesn't mean when you fix your subconscious, yes, you're way more resilient. You have more gratitude. You overall are happier, not in pain as much. Can be way more productive. My income went up 2.5 times in 3 years. And but with that said, you're not going to be free of pain, nor in this life, nor should you be. And learning the point of pain, whether it's physical pain, emotional suffering, hardship, adversity. I never remove adversity from people's lives. They may fix their problems to a point. I mean, they often do, and improve their situation. But listen, after I cleared my trauma 6 years ago, I had a dog die. I cried for 4 days. No amount of hypnosis is going to take care of that grief. You lose a friend, if it's a friend you dearly love, you're going to feel bad for a while. And that's okay. Now, what I think is really interesting here with Dr. Lembke is she's saying there are things we can do that are uncomfortable, that are painful, but then it puts our dopamine in this elevated state. And with addictions or many types of pleasure, we feel good and then we come down and we crash a bit. And now we're below the baseline of feeling neutral. With exercise and certain hard, unpleasant tasks, that upfront pain leads to elevated dopamine for hours, feeling pretty good. And then it just comes down to neutral. We don't have to be on this seesaw. And that can, when it's taken to extremes, that can be the addictive cycle. Really up here, tons of pleasure, you did drugs or whatever, and then you crash and then you're feeling horrible and then you need your drug to get back up. Well, this is a healthy way to do it where you're not in that cycle at all. And we should not lead soft lives for this reason. Dr. Andrew Huberman, Stanford neuroscientist, he talks about ice baths and other painful things. There's a YouTube channel, After School, and it kind of does cartoon animations of many different things for educational purposes. It takes one of his neuroscience lectures about dopamine, and he's talking about ice baths. And yes, though, after the pain is over, your dopamine is elevated. And again, that's this pain pleasure balance. Our brain, too much pain, it'll compensate, and now we're feeling good. So this is a system within us that is very important to understand how to utilize. And what Dr. Huberman said in this video that I found very interesting is the problem is not that we have pleasure in our life, it's that we have easy pleasure with no effort. And if you're not putting in effort, and what I tell my clients is I say, hey, if you want to play video games or watch TV or whatever, do that after a hard day's work. Do that after the effort, and that will be better for you. If you get easy pleasure with no effort, it can put you in a funk. And then you don't even want to do work. And your brain's like, I already got the pleasure. Why would I even want to work? And then you can start to feel bummed out and have long-term low-level depression, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a point to pain. We should understand that our brain, if we have too much pleasure, our brain brings us down. If we have too much pain, our brain will try and bring us up and try and get us to that homeostasis. And that in some instances, feeling high like this will then make us low later. And you can do the seesaw back and forth, and it can cause problems. But there are ways where you can get that dopamine, you're feeling good, and when the pleasure goes down, it just goes to baseline, and now you're not in a funk. That's what she's talking about. And things that do that for us, we should do more of that. Exercise, very, very important. I like lifting weights. I could do it more, but I do it, a few times a week. And yeah, it does really help my mood. So very important to understand these concepts, and we will keep going with Dr. Lembke here.
Great way to get our dopamine in directly because it's much less vulnerable to that compulsive craving phenomenon of overuse.
So you're not going to get an exercise come down?
You can, but and people can get addicted to exercise, right? But typically it's very unusual because the upfront cost to do the work and endure the pain of exercise in the first place mitigates our vulnerability to an exercise addiction. And in general,
okay, because it's so hard to do that it's going to be hard. It's not like pulling a lever on a slot machine or clicking on a porn website. It's difficult.
Yes.
Okay. So fighting for the dopamine insulates us against the chance of an addiction, having to really fight hard for it. Okay.
Yeah.
And this kind of explains, I guess, in part why.
Easy pleasure. Pleasure is not the enemy. It's easy pleasure without effort. Our brain over millions of years has not evolved for that. Our brain has evolved to get us to work hard to get that pleasure, because 99% of human existence have been in these tough times, these hunter-gatherer tribes where you only got the reward after a lot of effort. That's what they're talking about. And that's what we should mimic, at least to some degree, in our lives today, if we want to be on an even balance and not this seesawing back and forth between pain and pleasure, and overall becoming more miserable.
I pulled out some stats ahead of our conversation today that from 1996 to 2008, participation in ultra marathons has increased by 1,676%. The ice bath market is expected to rise from 350 million in 2024 to nearly $500 million by 2030. The number of people taking part in obstacle course races like Tough Mudder or High Rocks, et cetera, has increased by almost 7x from 2010 to 2017. It seems like in society there's this counter movement towards people seeking out hard dopamine, chasing pain.
Yeah, those are amazing. I didn't know that. Those are amazing numbers. In general, there's a part of me that wants to say, well, that's a good thing. But there's another part of me that's wary also, because we're so good at drugifying everything that we do, that there's a way in which these types of behaviors can also be drugified, right? Made more potent with all of the technology, the way that we count ourselves, the leaderboards, the social comparisons. All of that takes this thing, which is really in its natural state, kind of impervious to addiction. Like, you just typically wouldn't get addicted to these types of painful physical activities. You would do what you needed to do for survival, but we've managed to make them addictive in all these different ways. I still think it's a better way to get your dopamine. Like, I really encourage exercise. We always talk about movement as medicine. And in general, our life is so...
Movement as medicine. So if you just pause and think about your life. If you're kind of feeling low-level blah a lot of the time, consider exercise. Consider going on walks every day, but also see that's exercise. It's good. Trust me, it's good. You're getting sunlight too. So I absolutely encourage that. But, if you have health issues, check with your doctor before intense exercise. But intense exercise, check with your doctor if you need to. Weightlifting, all of that. Get into that pain deficit to then get that pleasure that then doesn't seesaw back and forth, but just goes back to baseline. Consider doing that for your own mental health. It will help. It's bound to help. It may not be a cure, but it absolutely can help. If you are in this situation, consider moving around more, and if you can, if it's not unhealthy, intense exercise. You'll thank me if you take that advice.
Convenient, so easy, so passive, so sedentary, that I'm telling patients all the time, get up off the couch, move your body, walk around the block. I think that's the bigger obstacle right now, is just getting people to move. But I do think we need to be wary of not going too far in the direction of like the ultra, whatever it is.
So what is a better way to live if we're trying to optimize for happiness?
That applies to work too. People can overdo work, and there are some people work 90, 100 hours a week. And I know those types of people, and they're very successful, but at the same time, they live very unbalanced lives, and there is suffering because of that. There's long-term consequences. I won't say, everyone's on their own path. I won't say never do that, but I'll just make the observation that most people who do that do live unbalanced lives. And I kind of feel sorry if you're working all the time and you get all this success and you don't have any time to enjoy it. It's up to you. It's not my choice. So this applies to everything. Anything could be taken to extremes. I see these bodybuilders with just absolutely huge muscles, and they're taking all these steroids. A lot of them are dying in their mid to late 30s now, or 40s, because of heart failure, because the steroids actually make the heart itself becomes so bulky with muscles that it loses its ability to effectively pump blood and they die. And that's a phenomenon going on right now. Again, not all bodybuilders, but there's a shocking amount of the very elite ones that are dying in their 30s and 40s because they take things to an extreme.
And to keep our dopamine in balance and not have the crashes, etc., and come downs and hangover. What is a optimal way to live our lives? Do we have to look back at our caveman ancestors and live like them?
I think that part of the problem is that we've organized our lives now around rewards. Almost everything that we do is predicated on the feel-good moment we'll have at the end of it. And because of that, we are missing out on the process. We're projecting our psyche forward into the future toward the reward and not able to really be here in the moment. Okay, this is going to sound weird. I'm going to give you a weird example. So driving over here today, I found I was nervous for this interview and in a way looking forward to it, but in a way wanting it to be over, right? And in seeing that in myself, I thought that's so sad. Like that's so sad that we live our lives that way, myself included, always this weird blend of wanting whatever we're doing to be over. So that in a way we can just go hide and do whatever that self-stim thing is that we do where we're safe and we're like, stimulating ourselves in some way. And then I thought, well,
I could help out Dr. Lembke here. We have something we do. I tell my clients to do. It's called life gamification. And again, it's just a piece of the puzzle. It's not an entire solution, but on its own, it can be helpful. I do it for myself. I've been doing it for years. You give yourself points for tasks. And there are a lot of tasks that, require hard effort, aren't necessarily pleasant. And it can be easy to do what Dr. Lembke's talking about. I really don't want to do this. Man, I can't wait for this to be over. And your brain is focused on the pain or you are focusing on the pain, on the discomfort. Give yourself points for tasks. And what that'll do is that will cause a shift where you're now thinking, okay, if I accomplish this task, I give myself points. Now your brain is focusing on benefit and pleasure. And it's not a fix-all, but it does help. And for those of you who thinks, oh, that's stupid, just giving yourself points, that's going to help things. That's ridiculous. These points don't matter. Do a YouTube search for TED Talk Super Mario Effect. And I think his last name's Robert. I'm not sure. But do that because I show this video to my clients all the time. This guy who's an engineer, he has this YouTube channel that has over 10 million subscribers, I believe. And he does all these experiments and puts all these, cool engineering things together. And he did this experiment where on his website, he gave people a challenge, kind of like a little mini game or puzzle where they used coding instructions to direct a car to go through a maze. And there were two groups. He didn't tell people that there were two different end results. He just did it. And 50,000 people tried this little challenge. So half of the people, when they failed, this was a puzzle designed to be hard enough that you're going to fail multiple times before you succeed. And half of the people, when they failed, would get a message. Everyone's given 200 points to start. Half the people were given a message, that didn't work, try again. And then the other half were given the message, that didn't work, you lost 5 of your 200 points, you now have X points, try again. Just that simple message at the end, the people who lost 5 points each time they failed, they quit 2.5 times quicker. They only tried, on average, they only tried 5 times when they were penalized. These 5 points that don't mean anything. No one's even watching most of these people. They're just doing it on a computer all by themselves. They only tried 5 times. The people who were not penalized would try 12 before giving up. So if you think giving yourself points doesn't work, it absolutely works. This was a double-blind, legitimate scientific study with a control group. that was done. He set it up that way. It was all automated, so it was double blind. And he had a control group. Valid experiment. -5 points made people give up 2.5 times quicker. Giving yourself points actually releases dopamine. That's why all these video game companies, back in 2001, I believe, Activision hired a psychology team, and to hey, how can we structure these games psychologically be more addictive? And you've seen a shift and how many signals of achievement, of getting points, of making progress video games give us now. It's a massive difference. Go back, play games in the 1990s, play them now. Now it's you play these games, your character, even in a first-person shooter, your character gains levels, it gets points, it gets experience points, it gets money, it gets loot boxes, it gets all these unlocks and upgrades and skins. It's just constant sign of progress. All the AAA games and a lot of the indie games do that now too, because the games are designed to be addictive. And you think these points don't matter? They do. So use that to be productive. Shift your brain towards pursuing pleasure by saying, I get points for this. And then when you complete the task, give yourself the points. If it's a hard task, give yourself points to start, give yourself points for each step of the task, and then points for finishing. It's actually least important to give yourself points for finishing. Give yourself points while you're doing it is most important. But give yourself points for finishing too. You're giving yourself points through the day, and you're going to have less of this mindset of, oh man, this sucks, I don't want to do it, because you're shifting your brain towards, I'm getting benefit here. And it actually releases dopamine and increases your motivation. So there's a tip for you. She's probably going to say something profound now that invalidates what I just told you. I don't think so, but I watched this whole thing, but let's see what she says now. I forgot what she says next.
What if I knew that I was going to die right after? This is going to come off really weird now. But what if I knew that I was actually going to die right after our conversation today? That totally changes my perspective, doesn't it? Because this time you and I that's all I got. It's over for me when this conversation is it. I really better be right here, right now, and really taking joy in whatever you and I can find together. And I think.
Yeah, DSA Silo, 10 points for you, my man. Good job.
I think the more we can do that, the better.
What's happening there? You're removing the thought of the outcome, the reward, the potential, failure or whatever, and you're focusing on just being present. And in doing so, what is happening?
It's a great question, and I've actually given this quite a lot of thought, because I remember when I was in college and I, met some like Zen people, and they were like, be here now, be here now. And I thought, well, whenever I'm here now, I'm miserable. Like I don't like me, and I don't like being in the world.
That's toxic shame. And if you watch the last episode, she became addicted to romance novels. And what was kind of funny, but actually very telling, is she got to the point where she would just, she had kind of a severe addiction. She would like miss family events to just read these romance novels and get her dopamine hit. Romance novels for women is like porn to men. Case in point, 50 Shades of Grey. She would actually skip to the climax, which is like, where the girl and guy hook up and have sex, and everything before and after that, like the 30-page block. She started just doing that to get the dopamine hit. The craziest part of the book. Not the intro and the character development and all that. Yeah, she skipped that after a while and just went to the part that gave her the biggest dopamine hit, became an addict. Well, why? Well, this is why right here, what she's talking about. This is why people become addicts. The book Healing the Shame That Binds You came out in 1988. It was written by an alcoholic who fixes alcoholism, became a psychologist. And he says shame is at the root of all addiction. And that's what I was talking about before. So our brain has this pain-pleasure balance. If you're in pain, your brain tries to do something to get you into pleasure, or at least to break even. But the pleasure offsets the pain. But then when you have too much pleasure, your brain takes you down into pain. Your brain either wants you to go to the opposite side or into homeostasis, neutrality. But with most activities, especially addictive activities, if they're pleasurable, it takes us to that high, and then it makes us crash down. Same thing with sugar. It happens with our blood sugar levels and sugar. You can get high off of sugar, and then you crash, and then there are activities that lead to dopamine release, and then you just come back, you feeling good, dopamine, and then you come back down to baseline. Those are activities where you feel better afterwards, but it's painful while you're doing it, or uncomfortable at least. So that's where intense exercise, again, if you're not sure whether you can do intense exercise, check with your doctor first. But intense exercise, and yeah, if you can't do that, absolutely. I walk my dog 2-3 times a day, get out in the sunshine, do that and work out too. Do activities which require effort. But if you're like, I don't like me, all right, ask yourself why. Write that out. Are you not good enough? Are you falling short? Are you, do you feel like you're lazy, disgusting, stupid, whatever? If you got that down in your subconscious core identity, you're gonna, if you have that in your core, I just heard from Jordan, maybe he's coming on. If you have that in your core, you're gonna be mostly into the pain side of the pain pleasure balance, and that makes you susceptible to addiction. Because now the only way you can feel pleasure, you need this big hit. You know, Dr. Lembke here said orgasm from sex would it increases your dopamine level by 100%. A hit of methamphetamine increases it by 1,000%. And some people who are in pain because of toxic shame, because they don't like who they are, and their deep belief system is, I don't like me, just like she said, your brain needs the stronger stuff. Your brain is going to be desperate to do something to get you back into pleasure. Your brain is designed, if you're in too much pain, do whatever it takes to get into pleasure, or at least to break even. And then when you get too high, your brain actually brings you back down. And there's an evolutionary purpose. She talks about the purpose in the video we did last week. Watch that. I already went over that briefly earlier, so I won't repeat it. Let's see what Jordan says. Jordan just checked in with me. Yeah, so Jordan, he misunderstood. So for last week, this week, and 2 more weeks, I have webinars, and so we're starting the show early, and he thought it was just for 1 week. So let's see if he, so he just misunderstood. That's why he's not here. I forgive you, Jordan. Come on, if he can. If not, okay. All right, so toxic shame will make you predisposed to addiction. That's her right there. She just said it. Fix that, because it will mess up your life having this toxic shame in you. Later on in this interview, she briefly talks about shame, but I honestly don't think she fully understands the dynamic of toxic shame. They know about shame, but I think the reason that people like Jordan and me understand how devastating toxic shame is in relation to this pain-pleasure balance and just your entire life, really. I mean, suppressed emotions, and people will suppress their pain. That leads to cancer. You know, Dr. Gabo or Mate. Everything we say matches with science and what these luminaries are saying. But we emphasize toxic shame more because we see the before and after. We see people after their toxic shame is gone. I've felt it. I used to have a massive amount. I fixed myself. So I'm intimately aware of this because I've lived it. She knows shame is big. She doesn't know how big. She doesn't know how profound, because I don't think she has the methods to like clear it out of her core. I think she's using management techniques. I think she's probably gone to some psychotherapy. It's probably, you can slowly rewire your brain over time through repetition. It's not as powerful as what we do. It's not even close, not even close, but repetition can over time rewire your brain to a point. So maybe she fixed some of her toxic shame, but she hasn't seen the dramatic before and afters that we do hundreds and hundreds of times. We've done it for ourselves, do it for hundreds of other people. So she doesn't see the profound change, and maybe doesn't fully realize how toxic shame can screw up our brain's pain pleasure balance, predispose us to addiction, cause all sorts of problems, not just addiction, anxiety, depression, just it's the root cause of so many things. She's mentioning that she is talking about right now the root cause of why she became addicted, like severely addicted. If you listen to this interview, she talks about how severely addicted she just hole up and watch read romance novels and just abandon all her other responsibilities, and it was a severe addiction. That's what she's talking about right now. That's what it can lead to, among many other maladies. So we'll keep going. And actually, I'll just rewind a little bit. And here we go.
Now, be here now. And I thought, well, whenever I'm here now, I'm miserable. Like I don't like me, and I don't like being in the world. I don't.
That's toxic shame. That is subconscious trauma. That is a painful core identity.
Want to be here now. I want to be.
That will negatively impact every aspect of your life.
Be somewhere.
Fix it. You can fix it for free. Or at least you can make a lot of progress, because we have a system, RyanFowlerSOS.com. Well, there's approach, but also school.com/RyanFowlerSOS-7231. Go there, join. It's free. Then go to the classroom section, upper left, take the free course. Fix your toxic shame. It's what it's designed. If you want biggest, most powerful results, because that's do it yourself. You might be experimenting a little. It's not as powerful. You want big results, schedule a session with me. It's massive, substantial improvement for 95% of people, 93, 95%. One session, they're doing way better. Some people need 2-3 sessions or more to fix everything, but one session, people are permanently feeling better all the time. I do it all the time.
Where else? So I didn't really understand what they were getting at. It really took me, till I had lived quite a lot of life and had some, some significant experiences and given it some thought, that I realized, be here now means be here now and be uncomfortable and be okay with.
This is acceptance, and this is good. We'll keep going.
Being uncomfortable and being okay with not being able to control my pleasure or my pain or my comfort level, but just being open to whatever comes. And I think that's a key shift, that I'm not trying to control my experience in the moment, and that it's okay to be unhappy or restless or uncomfortable, and not trying to run away from that, but just really turn and face it and embrace the discomfort, which I
that's actually what we do as part of the healing journey, is we get you to face the trauma or being unhappy. But there's also a method, if that is tied to a subconscious belief, which honestly it usually is to some degree, if not 100%, you can get that out of you. You can actually get it out of you so you're permanently feeling way better. Again, I'm not saying you're immune to this pain pleasure balance. Your brain is designed to do this. You will still have hard, uncomfortable days, but this terrible baseline of I don't like me because I'm not good enough, or my life sucks, etc. You can get that out of you. Acceptance is does help. She'll talk about that. Accepting sometimes you're going to have pain, even if you have a pristine subconscious mind. Our brain's not designed for only pleasure and no pain. Our brain is designed to make us feel pain sometimes. That's our brain giving us a signal. It's not a bug, it's a feature. But you can get this baseline way up. Accepting when you are in pain, emotionally or otherwise, or physically, and just accepting it and saying that's okay. It's part of the process. It's part of life. That helps. But there are many times where you can actually cure the underlying subconscious trauma that is the main contributor to that. Unfortunately, she doesn't understand how to do that. I've never seen her say anything. And what's even more unfortunate is that at Stanford University, there's Dr. I think David Spiegel, and there's also Dr. Andrew Huberman, and they know hypnosis can fix this. She needs to talk to them and maybe do a session with Dr. David Spiegel and fix that. And she'll permanently be at a higher baseline.
I also think is quite universal. I don't think I'm alone in that. And then the key piece about not anticipating the reward helps me be in the moment, right? Because I'm not just waiting for the good thing to come after. I'm saying to myself, imagine there's nothing good coming after, nothing at all, right? There aren't rewards. This is it. And then also being able to say, and it's okay if in the moment, like, it's not great. Like, I can embrace that. I can be unhappy or restless or anxious or whatever it is. And then when I do that, I feel like there's a funny thing that happens. And all of a sudden, I'm not as anxious, right? And I am present, and there is some joy there.
Interesting. So when you allow yourself to deal with being uncomfortable in the moment, it turns out it removes the thing that was making you uncomfortable in the moment, which is like the avoidance or the worry or overthinking, whatever else.
Yeah, I think we have this, and it's fed by modern.
This is very important. This right here is going to help with procrastination. It's going to help with anxiety. And you will feel better overall. So many of us, we feel uncomfortable emotions, and we're saying to ourselves, consciously or subconsciously, probably both, this is unacceptable. I'm not supposed to be feeling this way. If I feel pain, that means I shouldn't be. And I need to fix this. And so that actually causes inner conflict that can increase the discomfort. But if you say, all right, I accept this, you can get a certain amount of peace from that. So one of the things we do when people come to me or Jordan or anyone else with, Tim, with high anxiety is we say, all right, see if you can connect to that anxiety. Now ask yourself, what is the worst thing I'm afraid could happen here? And then if you can connect to that worst thing, how that would feel, how would you feel if that thing happened? Can you remember a time you were in a similar situation, you had anxiety, and the worst thing did come through? How did you feel? And people say, oh, yeah, I failed at this thing and I felt like a loser. Or, yeah, I was financially hurt and I had to, move it back in with my parents because I couldn't pay. That happened to me when I was 28. My car got repoed. I'm 50 now, so it's a long time ago. Car got repoed, couldn't pay my rent, had to move back in with my parents. It was a worst case scenario. I had a business fail. Worst case scenario. But whatever that worst thing is, if you can say, hey, if that happens, I'll still be okay, and you get that acceptance, your anxiety goes way down. It may even disappear. Why? Because anxiety is our brain seeing we're in a situation that could lead to pain, and the flight part of fight or flight kicks in, and flight is anxiety. Avoid it. Do whatever you can to avoid it. The truth is, there is pain we cannot avoid. So if you accept it and you're no longer in avoidance mode, then the anxiety goes down or even disappears. You have acceptance, diffuses the need for defuses, like defusing a bomb, the need for anxiety. Anxiety, I got to avoid this. I got to avoid this. Accept it. Your anxiety goes down. You get a certain amount of peace. Now, of course, it depends on what you're trying to avoid. If you're in a car and another car is about to do a head-on collision, go ahead and swerve, man. Avoid that, right? Like, don't accept everything. But this is a serenity prayer that 12-step groups use. Give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And when you're in a situation, don't think that every pain can be avoided. Some cannot. And when you're in a situation where you're like, yeah, this is unavoidable, or I might be able to, more common, I might be able to avoid this, but I might try my hardest and not. Like, I'm not 100% in control here, whether or not I can avoid this. Okay. Accept the possibility that it may go to crap. You may have the worst case scenario. And even if that worst case scenario happens, you'll still all be all right. If you can get there, you're going to live a more peaceful life. Now, it's more powerful when you rewire this belief system on a subconscious level, but what you think and do consciously does matter too. It does have a significant impact. Subconscious more powerful. Conscious and subconscious are linked together. Your conscious can have some influence on the subconscious, although it's limited. And your conscious can affect your thought processes, can affect how you feel. So you cure the trauma subconsciously, these bad, painful belief systems, but you also then manage the remaining pain that is unavoidable, especially if you're going out and trying to up level in life and live a life of meaning. That means you're going to have a life of taking risks and facing challenges, which will involve discomfort and pain. That's okay. Learn to be okay with that. When I'm in pain, one of the things I tell myself is, this is only temporary. This is only temporary. I can get through it. You're willing to accept it. It will have a profound effect on your life, even just the conscious shift, if you're able to accept it like she's talking about. This is the most important interview Steve Bartlett did this year, Diary CEO. And if you watch the beginning of this video, he says exactly that. He's like, this is the most important one in a year. Let's see. I think Jordan's coming on. Jordan. All right, let's see. Well, okay. I'll wait until he actually shows up. But looks like he's probably going to hit the tail end of this. We will keep going. I'm glad you're here, Jordan, if you can hear me.
Culture, this kind of expectancy that really we should be happy all the time. And that if we've arranged things
what a destructive lie that is.
Appropriately for our lives, and if we've done our work and aimed true, then we should just be like, life is great. And I don't believe that anymore. I think that like Buddha said, life is suffering, but I really think that fundamentally, like, it's uncomfortable to be alive, and that it's a kind of a constant state of restlessness and discomfort, if we're being really honest and tuning in.
I think there's some truth to that. That's our brain getting us off our butts to do something so that we achieve and survive. We need to do stuff to survive. You need to make money and eat and drink and do whatever it takes to get those resources every day. That restlessness moves you forward. Accept that and then take action to the extent you can.
When I really let myself see that and feel that, all of a sudden I'm freed from some of that.
What has caused your anxiety throughout your life in the moment? You referenced earlier that some things have happened that have led you to understand this better and understand yourself better. What am I missing from this jigsaw puzzle?
Yeah.
Hello.
You could have been a psychiatrist.
Oh, really? Yeah. It's always time. This doesn't work out.
There's still.
Hey, Jordan, you're live, baby.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, how you doing? I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, sir. Yes.
All right. Welcome. So there's a miscommunication. Jordan thought that only last week we were doing early. It's actually, today and 2 more weeks, Jordan.
I should have seen it.
Thanks for coming on. Yeah, I did tell you, but whatever.
You did.
It's all good, man.
Not looking far enough back in the chat. It's my fault.
Yeah, it's all good, man. No problem. So we're covering Anna Lembke, talking about accepting, the pain-pleasure balance. Our brain, if we get pleasure, takes us into pain. If we have pain, tries to take it. At least that's what takes us into pleasure. That's what our brain's trying to do. That is what our brain is designed to do chemistry-wise. And right now we're talking about accepting that. Accepting there will be painful times, and that's okay. And that actually gives you more peace, less anxiety. It will make you more resilient. Understanding it's only temporary, but then now Dr. Lembke's talking about kind of a general restlessness in life, maybe a low-level discomfort. I don't think that discomfort's 24/7 at all, but I think it's bound to come up from time to time, probably every day. So
yeah, my initial thought on it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You go ahead.
Well, just I notice sometimes people tend to blur the lines between what is consciously normal and an unconscious program. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I first thought of oh, it's there's a low level of discomfort all the time. It's like, but is there supposed to be really though? It's like,
I don't think it's supposed to be there 24/7. No way.
Yeah, I
But every
don't
day
think so.
you might have periods of discomfort. You know, it might be low level.
Right.
But I have times where it's like, oh yeah, I got to do this, or I should do this.
But that's
or
environmental. That's external. That's life has stressors on you because the nature of existence is that. And so I think there's a big difference between that and it coming from your subconscious. And I think that's that's also one of the ways we can be helpful on our show is to try and, when people say stuff like that, low level discomfort, we can try and like dissect, what's appropriate, what's not. I shouldn't say
100%
word, but
because there's some suffering completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
But even if you get a pristine inner world, you will still have some discomfort, suffering, and pain in life because that's just how it is. And our brain is designed to have that pain, pleasure. Too much pleasure, our brain's own chemistry will take us down into pain with too much pleasure. Dr. Anna recently talked about there was time in her life, maybe she still has it in her, I'm not sure, where she didn't like who she was. And so I went into that's toxic shame. That is unnecessary suffering.
Yeah.
Now what she's talking about is a lot of people think they should be happy all the time. And this is our society. Oh, yeah, get the Lamborghini. You're on Instagram. You should be traveling the world. And if, doing all these, look at what all these other people are doing on Instagram, all this cool stuff, Facebook, they're posting the highlights, but that's all they're posting. So you think that's their life? And it's like, no, that's not life. Life is ups and downs. And so number one, be okay with that. And number two, don't tie your value to how you're doing at the moment. You're having I've had years I've made over $300,000. I've had years I made $30,000. So
it becomes an ever.
Am I less of a person in that year I made 30 grand, or is that just the swings of life? And a lot of people place their value on the fact that, I don't have the Lamborghini. I mean, literally guys come to us, I work at a call center, customer service, and it's someone in their 20s. And it's like, yeah, you're in your 20s, dude. I mean, come on, but they're feeling not good enough because they're not doing, I had someone come to me I've had people come to me making $250,000 a year, $125,000 a year. And they still feel not good enough because they're still not living that baller lifestyle. It's a fantasy. It's a freaking fantasy. Like Dan Bilzerian, case in point, dig into, like, he projects this amazing life. Turns out a lot of the girls that he was showing that came to his parties were paid. I
don't know if I read his autobiography, but Dan Bilzerian.
I think some of what he says is smart. But he also has gotten how many millions and millions of dollars did his business get, and it just went up in smoke. I wouldn't give that guy a dime as an investor.
I don't
Hell
remember
no.
which business that was. Maybe that's
you guys can Google it. Dan Bilzerian loses millions. It was like tens of. He had a company and he just blew it on yachts and stuff. Or maybe not yachts, but like, parties and, all this. He has some good things to say, but his life is actually very imbalanced.
Maybe we should cover Dan Bilzerian one. Maybe that's what I'll do next week.
He has some good insights, but he has a lot of his life is an illusion, straight up.
Well,
or at the very least, it's not. The reality is not what he presents to the world, at the very, very least. Yeah, has he had these huge parties where he has sex with lots of beautiful women? Yeah, absolutely. But the mechanics, he has negative parts of his life too.
Well, so because I've read his book, The Setup is fascinating, and what he talks, and I'll give the cliff notes here. Basically, he addressed, because he went into Navy SEAL training.
Yeah.
And he completed basically 2 hell weeks.
Yeah, I remember him talking about that. He on some interview.
Which is wild. And they kicked him out. And he says in there that basically the only reason he says at the end of the 2 weeks of the SEAL training, he was waiting for approval from one of the instructors who had doubted him.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, and the instructor didn't give him approval, didn't even acknowledge that he had passed, and not a nod, nothing. And he said,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember this phrase, he's like, that him not giving me approval at the end of my completing Hell Week hurt more than anything else they did to me.
Yeah.
They made me do, which is like any of the physical, because, Hell
That's
Week is
toxic shame.
Exactly.
I'm not good enough. They rejected me, therefore I'm not good enough. That's what that hurt was telling him.
Yep. Exactly.
And toxic shame is the most painful emotion we have. And it's buried in our subconscious. It gets triggered, but even when it's not triggered, it's there. And it causes your brain to say, I need something to offset this. And this sets up people for addiction, among other things, or all sorts of unhealthy pursuits, unhealthy activities to try and counteract that. Yeah, it's a big issue. So what we tell people, the reason we say you're good enough as you are, you have massive value just for who you are. You don't have to do or say anything to be good enough. You're like a diamond. You just have value for who you are. So what that means is in good times, you're good enough. In bad times, you're good enough. It gives you peace, stability, safety. It makes you less fearful. What if I fail? And then when I fail, I'm not good enough. I'm a loser. I'm a failure. That will generate anxiety and fear about doing anything you can fail at. And then you avoid doing those things and you are less successful.
Yeah.
So you're good enough just as you are. If you fail, you're still good enough. Now people aren't procrastinating as much. Now they are moving forward in life. They're taking risks and they will fail. I have failed, but then you learn and you grow and you become a stronger, wiser, more skilled, knowledgeable person. You have more power and you go back. Maybe you fail again, but you learn a little more. You get a little stronger. And because you're not afraid, you don't fear failure because it doesn't affect your value. It doesn't make you hurt like Dan Bilzerian hurt when he got rejected by these authority figures. You're able to keep going. You are just psychologically stronger. You will have more success. But when you're able to embrace discomfort, pain, hardship, that is the good dopamine. That is a dopamine where, and Dr. Anna Lembke is talking about exercise. You do hard, intense, uncomfortable exercise. It raises your dopamine level for hours, and then it doesn't swing down. It doesn't crash. You just slowly come down to baseline, to neutrality. You take a drug, big spike, and then you crash, and now you're feeling horrible, and you need more of the drug to get back up. If you embrace uncomfortable, painful things because they don't affect your value, so you're not afraid of them, you're not afraid of failure, you're now embracing the hardship and you're getting the good dopamine. You're also going to find a life of meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
Which is now you're getting serotonin. Now you bond with others, you get oxytocin. You don't crash from serotonin or oxytocin. I mean, in extreme circumstances, you can have what's called a serotonin storm, but that's going to happen with drugs. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that I don't think that just happens from normal behavior. So, yeah. And
I'd also say, like, instead of that word risk, you might start using the word like experiments. Like, it's just, I think the risk, part of the reason you're viewing it maybe as a risk is because of the attachment to your ego. But when you remove that, when you believe you're good enough no matter what, you might just see these, you're just trying a new thing, which doesn't inherently seem like a risk anymore.
Yeah. It depends how you look at risk, because I kind of like to say I'm a risk taker. It kind of makes me feel good. But yeah, it's up to you, man. Whatever, if it works for you, calling it an experiment instead, go for it, man.
Yeah, I think that helps. The risk taker model helps explain the behavior a little bit better. But yeah. I
see where you're coming from, though, and I think some people should say, "Hey, I'm just going to practice this. I'm just going to experiment. there's absolutely value in taking that approach for many people.
Yeah, I think saying the word risk kind of implies if some people, and maybe this is just a semantic argument, so pick whatever language makes you feel best. But I think that when it's an experiment, when you say it's an experiment, you're a little more detached from the results versus you say it's a risk. It's kind of implied with that language choice that you're more attached to the results. Like you're doing something, it's like risk it for the biscuit. But it's an experiment. It's like I'm here just to watch the results rather than engage with the results, I think, which is like that meditation practice, observation over engagement. But whatever 100%. You like.
Well, and what we really need to do most of all is detach our sense of value from whether we succeed or fail in anything.
Right.
And you absolutely can do. I do that. Like, okay, I failed, has no effect on my value. I'm learning and growing, experimenting, as you were practicing.
Yeah.
All right. So, if you can cue up Dr. Anna again.
You need me to do that?
Yeah.
Are you getting on with?
Yeah, I'm going to play a little more, and then we're going to wrap it up before too long. We're at the hour mark. But she has a few more important things to say, just real quick.
It's all right. Yeah. It's not too late. You get a new profession. Yay. I think, for me.
Understand yourself better. What am I missing from this jigsaw puzzle?
Yeah. Well, you're good. You could have been a psychiatrist.
Oh, really? Yeah. It's always time. This doesn't work out.
There's still time. Right. Yeah. It's not too late. You get a new profession. Yay. I think, for me, the big turning point was that we lost a child. And in the immediate aftermath of our child's death, I was just determined to sort of undo the experience and, get enough psychotherapy and enough whatever it took to sort of not feel that pain. And it wasn't until I really just said, oh, I'm going to feel this pain for the rest of my life. It's never going away. That suddenly I felt some relief from that pain. And that was a real window for me.
So interesting that it's acceptance.
Yeah. And I think, one of the reasons I love treating patients with addiction is because I really relate to that hitting bottom moment, that moment when it's like, you just have the feeling that everything I try to do to manage this behavior or to make my life better only makes it worse. I felt like I had a very similar experience.
Okay, so that's a good stopping point. Any thoughts on that?
I think both of us can probably relate to that sentiment with our clients.
Yeah, well, and with our own lives.
Well, meaning the idea of there's probably few feelings that clients have experienced that we haven't also experienced ourselves. And that allows us to understand what that's like. And so I think that the care we take when we're dealing with clients to just understand what they're going through and kind of have some empathy for that. I think that makes us both good, coaches, or however you define yourself, hypnotists.
And I'll repeat the serenity of prayer again. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, the wisdom to know the difference. When it comes to your belief about your ability and value, who you are, you can get that to a point where you're like, wow, I have value for who I am. I'm good enough just for who I am. I don't need to do or say anything to be good enough. I just have value. Failing does not affect my value. It's just learning and growing. If someone rejects me, that doesn't affect my value. It doesn't mean I don't have value. It means they can't see it. That's their blindness. That's their problem. And these are things within you that you can change. There's actually a lot you can change that you don't think you can, but you actually can. And that's what we do. There's things, Dr. Anna, there are some things you can't change. Her child dies. She's going to feel a lot of pain and grief over that, and some of it will linger the rest of her life. I understand that. I get that. I haven't lost a child, but I've lost other things dear to me. So accept that. The things you can't change, accept. And you will find comfort in that. But if you feel bad about who you are, please understand that can 100% be changed. And when you change that, it changes everything, because that goes to the core of who you are. It will affect your entire outlook on life for the better, and it will profoundly change your life. So that's all I had. Any final words, Jordan?
No, thanks for letting me hop on at the tail end here. I'll be more on time next week.
Yeah, it's all good, man. No problem. Stuff happens. Maybe next time I'll be late and you start early. Or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll work it out.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, Jordan.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
And thank you, our loyal audience, for coming, watching, learning, growing. We're all going to have pain and suffering at times. It's unavoidable. Accept it for what it is. It doesn't affect your value. You are enough just as you are. And when you are suffering, it's only temporary. And learn to embrace the pain when it's good pain, when it's, the pain of effort, of working hard, or other types of suffering and pain. By embracing them, it can actually then lead you to greater heights of fulfillment, progress, learning, growing, all sorts of good things. The right types of pain are oftentimes a prerequisite for those types of growth and learning and enjoyment. So that's our show today. Hope you found it useful. We'll be here next Saturday at 8:30 Pacific time, 11:30 Eastern. We'll be doing that for 2 more weeks, and then we'll go back to our normal time of 1 hour later. 9:30 Pacific, 11:30 Eastern. That's all, or 12:30. I'm not sure. Yeah, 11:30. All right, so that's it for today. Thanks, Jordan. Thank you, everyone, for watching. You truly do have more power than you know, but we're not gods, so we don't have control over everything. And the things we can't control that hurt, learn to accept it, and you will find peace in that. That's our show. Thanks, everyone.